Penn State football has a lot going on. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. I don't have the skills that the two people you see here on the show have. The storyteller and the information gatherer, both guys have the ability to cut through all of the things going on right now and give you the information you need to know about Penn State football, firing Mike Yurcich, losing to Michigan, setting up for Rutgers, the final part of the 2023 regular season. We are here on Tuesday in the aftermath of all of those events, right before the Rutgers game. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. I want to give you the opportunity to have your first thoughts here. Nate, what are your thoughts coming out of everything we just saw with Penn State football?
How much time do we have?
Well, we have about 60 minutes, but you have about 2 minutes here.
No, but for me personally, let's go with 60 minutes. No, look, I think that there's certainly a lot of gray, and there's places that we can take this. I mean, there's a million places that we can take this, and I feel like we have over the last 3 days. But when you boil it down, it's that they didn't play well offensively against the two teams in the conference that they're trying to beat, right? That they're trying to get on the level of. It's consistent, right? It is offensive. It's not as though there are, like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. The offense wasn't able to score at a level or perform at a level that is a requisite of beating those teams, right? You can even say the high water mark was the 31 points against Ohio State last year, but it included 4 turnovers, right? And one of those was a pick six. So you've just got these situations where it has been made abundantly clear over the past 3 years that Penn State has not made progress offensively to the level needed to get past those two teams. And without that, James Franklin felt as though it was time to make a move. And I think it's hard to argue against it at this point.
Fitz, what's off the top of your mind today?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, the big game is what it comes down to. We talked to James Franklin yesterday, and he basically said that, decisions were made that weren't necessarily what they were going for, and the results for themselves here, man. I mean, we talk all that time about the 2-game season, and we talk too much about the 2-game season, but that's what it's come down to, and Penn State's 0-2 in that 2-game season. So, I think this is a situation that progressed from Ohio State. I mean, there's frustration there with everybody. I mean, we talked about it after the Ohio State game with the defense, like the way that they've played and the way that they've been supplemented. I mean, that's got to be just killer for Manny Diaz and that crew. And, that finally comes to a head with Rutgers and Michigan State still on the schedule. So that's an opportunity for you to, see what you have in house. I don't think they're going to go in house. I think they're aiming big here. It's a situation that you could kind of see or you could trace back the breadcrumbs to that Ohio State game, and this Michigan one just put it over the top. And it clearly was not going to get it done in the games they needed to get it done. And that's the results that you see.
I've been thinking a lot about this, and Nate and I had a conversation after James Franklin's press conference. Some of it made it onto the camera, and we talked about that on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. But what it comes down to, Nate has laid the point out several times that, and you guys just said it, in the big games, this team hasn't been good enough. And when you try to scratch deeper of like, okay, what are the issues? How do you untangle it? It explodes in your face. It's recruiting issues, offensive line, receivers, play calling, and some of the deeper things that I tried to get a handle on this week of how the sausage was made for this team. And it seems like there were issues at all the levels of these teams. So all the levels of that for this team. So then it just becomes, I think, that stuff, the totality of it is what matters, not necessarily all the individual factors, as you guys are saying, is that it's all a problem. And I guess this is then the question, Nate, that I have for you, that wraps up to that's the offensive coordinator's fault, that all those issues persist that led to bad game days against your best competition, those small inefficiencies. Is that a fair way to phrase that?
Yeah, I just think it demands context. It demands, okay, this is a disaster in these games.
Yeah.
this is a disaster overall? No, I don't think I would say that. It's not a horrible offense. They've had problems this year, like no doubt about it. The receivers are part. You just listed some of them. It is comprehensive. It's all the way across the board. Everything goes into it. And so what you end up having is a overall against weaker competition or against not the best, okay. Like they're okay as an offense. They're all right. They've had some moments.
Yeah.
They've done some things that have worked well with that complementing piece of the defense, right? Which is an important component and factor to this. Not messing it up, right? But by holding on to the football, like those are good things. Those are things that you want. But ultimately, this whole conversation is not about that. It's not about what you do in those other 10 games. And I will say, the foregone conclusion that they'll be fine against a Rutgers team that has a pretty good defense is I feel premature. Right? Like they got to get out of the woods here. They got to be able to finish this thing out with the group that they have. But the whole conversation just comes back to what James Franklin said yesterday. You have to play your best game of the season against the best teams on the schedule. And instead, they're not even average performances offensively, right? Like you could throw up your Illinois performance, which wasn't a great offensive performance. But if you had the Illinois game against Michigan and Ohio State, you might have actually been okay, or at least a little bit more competitive offensively than what they were able to do. But they're not. And so they've had their worst performances in the games that demand their best performances. And ultimately that falls to the feet of the offensive coordinator. But the offensive coordinator is James's job. That's his whole right? Like that's his responsibility. So yes, it's the offensive coordinator's responsibility to run that operation, and it's James's responsibility now to fix it.
Yeah. We'll get to more of this conversation. You're going to get about 60 minutes of this today. And we'll also talk about what's coming up next and the next steps for the offense. But right now, I want to tell you about my new favorite sponsor because I love this guy, Bruce Lombard MMA. Local business. Love to get a bunch of local businesses here because we are a local show. All three of us here sitting here live in State College. If you have a son or a football team, do you want to give them an edge on the football field? The good news is you don't have to live in State College to get access to Bruce's instructions. Every split second and every moment in the game matters. That's what we're talking about today. So train like the best by training with the best. MMA FX is a hand fighting course taught by Bruce Lombard of Lombard MMA in State College, but he has a video training set and he has trained some of the best programs from Alabama to the New York Giants over the last several seasons in hand fighting expertise. You can get the MMA FX video, which is 25 different techniques, 60 drills, 4 levels of difficulty, with all of the aim to making you a better football player that can win the point of contact. You can win your assignment. So if you have a son that you want to give an edge on the football field to, if you have a defensive line, you want to make them better. This system benefits defensive linemen, linebackers, receivers specifically, but there's also there's also an offensive line boxing class that teaches you a bunch of different great techniques. So there's too many things to get here to today. But specifically, one thing I want to point out is I think we've all been pretty impressed with what Deion Barnes has done with the defensive line this year. Bruce Lombard trained Deion Barnes. He trained Daquan Jones, who was having a great year for the Buffalo Bills before he got injured. So the results speak for themselves. Visit MMAFX.net today to learn more, or you can contact Bruce at MMAFX.net. So super happy to have Bruce here, and I want to keep him happy because I don't want him to fight me. I'm terrified.
Olu Fashanu does it. What else do you need?
Yeah. Maybe one day you can be a top 5 pick if you train with Bruce, but no, he's
personally.
Maybe.
Here's the thing: is like you can't control if you're 6'6". You can't control if you have the gifts of Olu, but you can maximize every single potential, every single moment that you have by using Bruce's techniques, because Dennis Sutton works with him, and Denai has been pretty unblockable this year.
Right. And did you see the cut-ups of Olu from the Michigan game? Like that, boy, he's good. And I understand where the offense is the big train wreck right now, but man, he's a heck of a player. But yeah, we appreciate Bruce. We appreciate everything he does for us to cover, and also as a sponsor, because he's done an awesome job. And notice that Bills reference in there. Is that the only Bills reference we're going to get today from you?
Unless you want to talk about Joe Brady. So no.
Nothing happened last night. Okay, good.
I running on 5 hours of sleep of disappointment because of what that game was last night. The worst defense to have on the football field with 4 seconds left is the Bills secondary. I don't know why they keep giving up games in the very final 5 seconds, but they do. Fitz, by the way, you looking good. Did you get a haircut recently?
Nope, I have one scheduled for next week. I just, I wore that collared shirt on Sunday for the show, so I figured I got some grace, so I'm just kind of slumming it today, and I just kind of did the regular look. I'm using my Caldera products, which they're not sponsoring the show today, but I still use them whenever they're not sponsoring. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you. It makes me feel really good.
Good. What do you want to talk about from yesterday from Mike Yurcich, the Mike Yurcich got fired press conference? Because there was 99% questions about Mike Yurcich yesterday. So James Franklin's press conference was having yesterday. It's all rolled into the same conversation, which also all rolled into the Michigan game. So we're going to get to all of it sporadically throughout the show. But what stood out to you about James Franklin's comments when asked about his decision to move on from Yurcich the day before?
The first thing, I didn't think it was a question, but it was asked about whether that was his decision or whether that came from above him. I mean, that's a Franklin decision. He's got control, man. Like he's answers to Pat Kraft, answers to Neely, and all that kind of stuff. But like, this is a decision that he made. And I know Nate has been absolutely spitting fire on the message board the last couple of days, and you should check that out if you're on Blue White Illustrated. But yeah, it's a decision that was not. I'm gonna light you up, or I'm gonna set you up for this one, Nate. A decision not made by pressure, like outside pressure, but a decision to get better. Like, and that's really what I think people are missing. Like, I think that the outside noise is a bit overrated in situations like this, because what's going on in the building 7 days a week as opposed to the one day on the schedule. And obviously that's been an issue as well. But I think that this is something that has been building for the last couple of weeks, and it's not really a reactionary piece as much as it is hey, to get where we need to get, that just can't happen again. And you've got too much evidence from these games, from these 2-game seasons that you keep losing, that to think that it's going to just magically change in the offseason.
Nate, he set you up. Go for it.
All right, I'll hit. This is my fastball. I was going to use it later, but fine, Fitz, if you insist. No, it's exactly that. This is the being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And so if you're looking at the environment that James Franklin is surrounded by right now, it is like any one of us in those shoes would be deeply uncomfortable. I would be deeply. I mean, how awkward, how awful to have such a sentiment from your fan base to be just vigilantly against you and the decisions that you make. It is like, doesn't sound great. Not something I would enjoy. But I think what he said yesterday about being able to, like, he was asked, what did he hear when he came off the field? And look, that I think everybody's kind of seen those social media clips, people throwing stuff, some name calling, some not nice things. Vega. Yeah. Venga call him back and being pretty aggressive about it and defending his coach. Like, that's not a great place to be. But I think that Franklin making this move and doing so in a way that is atypical for him, right? He has replaced coordinators in the past, some not by choice, right? This narrative that this is something that he's had to do. They're cycling through coordinators. Well, some of them are because they took head coaching jobs, and one was because he didn't really want them in the first place. And the first one was because that's what you do when you get a new job. You bring your staff with you. So there is context that's important, instead of just like, oh, he's just trading these guys like baseball cards. It's not that. However, the the list of evidence, the things that he had to go through and look at to evaluate the performance of the offense in these games and in totality over the last 3 years was enough for him to say, hey, we're not going to wait. We're not going to do this later. What's the point? Why do that? Right. Because a guy who's uncomfortable, a guy who isn't at peace with understanding where this program is and where he wants it to go might sit on his hands. He might be willing to let things play out longer and hope for something to change, even though there's no reason at this point to hope for that. There just isn't evidence of that. So the fact that he made this decision right now speaks to me to the fact that he sees this as a massive opportunity to improve the program. He's got the backing of the university president, of the athletic director. He's going to have a budget to work with, I expect and anticipate. That will make this a highly appealing pitch. And so you've got these contrasting different, like, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Everyone on the outside thinks this is a disaster, right? James Franklin, we have established, is an excellent recruiter, right? We know that. We know that he has an ability to bring people into the program, whether it's recruits or coaches, that even when it might not seem like the most advantageous position for them, he's able to sell the idea for those people that it is the most advantageous position. And so my anticipation in every way is that he will be able to appeal to and recruit an excellent offensive coordinator to fill this position.
Stephen Light is buying that. He's here on the YouTube channel as always. He says, good morning, gentlemen and fans. Time to think about next season in the NIL. Making it sound like NIL is the NFL draft for college football fans now. Hope that James can find an offense coordinator that can help the quarterback. And Nate, just to follow up here quickly, I want to get to some other things, but is it more than the quarterback? Because I'm fixated on the quarterback, making sure that your best option for being elite, getting to that next level, is comfortable and confident, but that will happen if you have just like greatness around him as well. So like it's about more than the quarterback, or is the quarterback front and center in the conversation in your mind?
Me or Fitz?
You like,
yeah,
you know,
no, I
like
think it's extremely important. Obviously, I mean, you have to be able to, but it can't just be about Drew. Right? Like it has to be about more than that. It has to be about what you believe is the blueprint for success. I think in a paramount way against those two teams.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to mold this to that idea and be willing to accept that idea and that blueprint might be susceptible against some of the other defenses in the league, against some of the other ways that opponents are going to play you through the season. But yeah, it is a huge factor to be able to, at this moment, get Drew back on a path that you want him on, and then be able to get the pieces around him in place that you feel like you need to be able to have the type of success against those teams that you want.
Yeah, and Fitz, I guess the question I was trying to ask, and I think the point is, like, it's not just about getting the quarterback to play well and a lot of passing yards. It's about, and both of you guys are saying this, find the absolute best offensive coordinator and having the resources to make that guy want to come to Penn State. And that is about the quarterback and beyond that. Is that a fair way to phrase that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if this is a pivotal spot for quarterback recruiting at Penn State, and I know that you can always go through different personnel and different coordinators and things like that, and you're, running out of, different ways to say it, but Penn State does not have a reputation of developing quarterbacks, despite Sean Clifford, 5th round pick, Trace McSorley, 6th round pick, I think it was. And then before that, Hackenberg, 2nd round pick, but that was, it feels like so long ago. So they don't have this this reputation where they're at that top level and that top tier of quarterback recruiting. But Drew was the guy that could change all that. So you're looking at a spot where that's a pivot right there. So he can either change all that because he's good and he's got these tools to be a high level draft pick, or it could go completely wrong and you can find yourself festering in the waters of Micah Bowens, where you've been in the past. So that was really mean. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone
Come
there.
on, Fitz.
But to the point of like, let me make it right for you, Fitz. Of like here in the chat, everyone's bringing up names we know. Moorhead and Pribula could be a good situation. Not going back to the same well of playing the same style, playing the same way, like evolving the situation, and not necessarily having to think of the same guys that you have relationships with. But like this is truly a national search for the absolute best player, coordinator that you can find. Based on the parameters of the position, not necessarily we need to bring in somebody we know because we have that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a spot right now where, Penn State has made the most oftentimes out of what they have. But Ohio State is not in a situation where, I don't think Kyle McCord's lighting the world on fire, but like they're getting the guys that can put them in position to function at the highest level. Penn State, on the other hand, trying to make the most of what they have in the situation. That's a big gap right there. That's a big difference in programs there. So I just, it's so tough to say because you can't make a hire based on one guy. They obviously didn't make the Franklin hire based on Hackenberg, which is the right decision in the long run. Like that's not a situation where you have to go with one guy because this is not a guy that you can sign to a 7-year extension, like a pro quarterback. So find a guy that fits. We keep going back to the Franklin scheme and the Franklin core, whatever he's going to use as an offense. He's got a loose set of standards. Like I don't think you can look at his offense or look at the ones that he has put together and say this is exactly what he wants to do, and he's rigid and he's not going to get away from that. Like that's the issue I have with this whole thing about Franklin, like just like stepping on everybody's toes, and every time something goes bad with the offense, he's the guy that's running it. And Nate's smiling because we've had this
meddling. The word is meddling.
The word is meddling, and you don't have proof of that. And I've talked to a lot of people that have coached on that sideline, coordinators included. They don't say that that's the case. Now, he's got input. He's a head coach. He better have input. But it's not a situation where he's going out calling, changing play calls, changing strategies and things like that. And that's the toughest thing to get out from under, is because there's this perception out there that he's the guy that's mucking up everything. Right. And I just that's a crazy way to think about it. And it goes back to the quarterbacks thing because he has never had that top level guy at the end of the day. He's brought in some pretty good quarterbacks, and brought in Will Levis, who ended up being a draft pick, but there are plenty of marks against him on the quarterback thing. This is the thing that was supposed to get him over the hump, and there's still a chance that it can.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you're looking at the long view and James Franklin making hard decisions, that's about, not specifically just about Drew, but getting over that hump and developing the quarterback and everything that James Franklin said about getting the quarterback in rhythm and the issues with the offense this year specifically of not doing things to put Drew Allar in a position to have success. In my film room, I talk about the percentage of times Drew Allar was throwing the ball on 3rd and 4th down. If you haven't checked it out, it came out this morning. Like, I was shocked when I saw some of these numbers of, if you want, I put context what James Franklin said about the Michigan game specifically. We got a question here. Samareth Serene asks, we use the metric of losses against big teams, but we have always been underdogs against them, meaning Ohio State and Michigan. I get we had bad performances against them. What makes him mad is wasting Drew and the defense. So I guess the metric of James Franklin being the underdog but not winning any of these games, I guess, how do you view that in the parameters of he's making a change to make that happen again, but still there have been different coordinators, there have been different defensive styles, there have been different offensive styles, and they still have the same issue of being underdogs in those games. Nate, is there validity to you have to win as the underdog every once in a while, or is it truly like you have to find the right pieces to be in the building to win, and they still are going through that process, and this is a part of that?
I mean, certainly I think that there's elements of both. Look, like another win or two out of what we're at 14 tries now against top 5 teams would be good for Penn State. Right? Like, bottom line, would it be better if he wasn't a 1-12 or 1-13, whatever it is now? Yeah, for sure. Is it reasonable to expect him or Penn State to be better than like 3 wins in that same span, given where Penn State has been ranked for the majority of those games? No, It's not. It's crazy. That whole conversation is just wildly misrepresented in terms of how often other programs win as underdogs. It just is, especially against top 5 type opponents. It just so happens that the two teams that they're trying to play in the Big Ten are perennially in the top 5. Like they just are. They have been. I know I should not be stunned by this, but looking back at Ohio State and seeing that a run of not in all of James Franklin's tenure, not having a season finishing worse than 7th is genuinely incredible. Like that, say what you want, national championships or not, that is a remarkable run of success for that team. It is consistently elite at Ohio State. And it just so happens that Michigan has turned the corner over the past 3 years to be part of that conversation. So it like the problem that I see for James Franklin, for Penn State football right now is this notion of the upward trajectory, right? Because this was that. This was the upward trajectory. Now it's like, okay, for the arc of his career and his tenure at Penn State, it's been mostly trying to do this. You're fighting an uphill battle. There were outside constraints, things that had to be considered to get to that place. But now that they got here, they like those. So I'm describing it on the screen, but point being is Michigan and Ohio State have been excellent, and Penn State is near them. They can see them. They're there, but they haven't been able to continue that progress in a demonstrable way on the field. They have not been able to make that progress. And that is very, very damaging, I feel like, when it comes to the perceptions of the program and where they want to go.
I would have some yodeling music while you were doing this because it's very Price is Right. And this is the Fitz. I guess this is the next question. And I'm kind of beating around the bush with things that are in the chat. The reaction to Mike Yurcich being fired, Penn State fans want their pound of flesh, and they got it. Mike Yurcich is fired, but it does not seem that it has satisfied them because, as Nate just said, they've gotten to a certain point where they've gotten up the hill, and then they crap out, and now they're back at kind of the position they were before, where in 2017 they're challenging and they crap out. And they're not maintaining that level of consistent progress towards the point where now you have your 5-star quarterback and the offense still isn't working. So I guess like we've talked around this, but is this change necessary to satisfy Penn State fans for the failings of that?
I mean, it's college football fan base is never going to be satisfied. Even when you're lifting that trophy at the end of the year, when Georgia's lifting their 3rd straight trophy this year, like that some people will not be satisfied. But no, I mean, Nate's right. It's a slow climb. And then there's only so much to do at the top of the mountain. And the things that you have to do at the top of the mountain are beat the ones that are already there. And it's harder to, I know they say it's harder to stay there, but like when you can do this in college football and you can recruit at the level that Ohio State has been able to recruit, and you've been sort of, your trajectory and said several times that 2016 was like, I don't want to say too much too fast, but like that really just blew all expectations out of the water. And then 2017, you got to the top of that mountain, and then 4th and 5, you dipped. That's kind of, or actually that was 2018. Sorry, but no, that's kind of just the same wall that you keep running into, and the colors don't change. The logos don't change, and that's the frustrating part. Is you're just sitting on the outside waiting to get in the game, and you just you just have to keep sitting there, and that's the most frustrating part. So it's been I mean, when that's the and maybe with divisions going away, which that's the big thing here, right? Is like Penn State has to play those 2 teams every year because they're in the Big Ten East. They don't have to do that next year. Will that change things? I don't know. Will this hire change things? I don't know. Nate and I are not going to sit here and tell you that this next guy is going to blow it out of the water. Like, this is something that is a very, very big question mark. James has made good hires. James has also made not good hires. Like that is the elephant in the room here. And it's just I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. It's going to be different. We're not going to know that.
Yeah. You said exactly the thing I was thinking after the game, immediately watching Michigan win a game against Penn State where you felt like Penn State had the opportunity based on the way the defense is playing. I'd like something new to talk about. I'd like a new way to say all of this stuff, but we're in the same exact position. We're going in circles, and we're saying the same things. Michigan and Ohio State are better. Penn State hasn't gotten to that level yet. Here we are saying the same things on Tuesday after saying the same things in the postgame show. So here's something that is could be new and revolutionary for your life, and that is My Perfect Franchise. Ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, or maybe you want a side hustle? I'm a side hustle guy. If I can increase what I'm doing in incremental ways, I absolutely love that. This is increasing what you do in a massive way. You can build wealth, diversify, leave a legacy for your family. My Perfect Franchise and Andy Ludicky is a great opportunity if you have the skills. If you are a person that has corporate management skills, understand how to run a business, and have an expertise in a certain field. This is not for everybody, but this is for you if it's for you. And he is able to help you figure that part out with his free consultations. So check out myperfectfranchise.net. You can give him a call, 404-973-9901, or you can email him, andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Whether things are booming or there's a downturn in the economy, there's always an avenue forward in business. And Andy has personal experience managing multiple franchises and is going to share his knowledge with you. And most importantly, like I said, he's putting you in the right business so you can be successful and you can reach your full potential. And get that unlimited PTO of being your own boss and having that be a meaningful thing where you're not working 24/7. Or you can if you want to. If you want to be a hands-on owner. Again, 404-973-9901. Thanks to Andy for being a sponsor here on the BWI Live Show. Let's talk a little bit about the game, and we'll get into it from James Franklin's comments being very specific, because I asked him, is it the plan or is it the execution of the plan? Because he talked about execution of the plan, not getting the quarterback in rhythm, but also the game plan didn't seem like it was setting the quarterback up for success generally throughout the two big games we're talking about here. So not getting the quarterback in rhythm was a big part of that. Fitz, what did you think about the Penn State offense specifically? We haven't really talked a whole lot about the game. What were your thoughts of, and you're muted here, what were your thoughts of what you saw on Saturday from the offense that led to where we are now?
Well, I thought it stunk, I mean, I don't know. And with Mike Yurcich getting fired, I haven't gone back and really looked too closely at it, because that's kind of the whole story, right? If you're going to fire your offensive coordinator after a game like that, it's probably pretty bad. Again, same story as Ohio State, no continuity, no purpose, a lot of trying to coach around and outsmart the other side when you didn't need to. And I think that's been the most frustrating thing for Penn State fans to watch this year is like, hey, there's a good game. And then all of a sudden, there's a change and something doesn't happen. All of a sudden it's 3rd and 3, 4th and 3, that's kind of been the situation there. So much built into preventing turnovers, which they've done a great job of to the extent where it's been a detriment to what they're trying to do. Yeah. So much worrying about staying ahead of the sticks and staying ahead of schedule that I think that they've called the game in that 10-yard box. Like we talked about that, the passing tree, the receiver route tree has been pretty much non-existent past the yellow line, that, and I know it's digital, but like, that's where Penn State likes to play. Like you're talking about, everyone's turning to the Kaytron Allen thing. I'll turn to the Kaytron Allen thing. 9 yards on first down. Then you throw a pass near the line of scrimmage. And I know that was a check. James Franklin said afterwards, it was a run play. They checked to a pass play. Check to a pass play. That's great. 2nd and 1, you're just asking yourself to either go backwards or not get what you need by going horizontally like that. These are things that are just like, what are we doing here? And and I know that we're not offensive coordinators. Nate, you're not an offensive coordinator, right?
What?
No. Yeah.
I could be.
I play one on YouTube.
We keep talking identity and stuff, but just like from a down to down basis, there are so many dead spots. I mean, it's like driving through central Pennsylvania. Just there's nothing there. And sorry, Nate. I've been saying that one for a couple days now. It's been a situation where there's just no continuity, and you can't have that because it loses your players. It loses their ability to think that they can make the plays because they're waiting for somebody else to make the small enough play. You average 3.5 yards a carry, you're going to get a first down, but there's a lot more that goes into it. when you talk about that. So it's just I'm so tired of watching it, man. Just it was a situation, and I know they scored 51 points 2 weeks ago, but like the scoreboard has kind of, and I know somebody mentioned it earlier, the scoreboard has been like their worst enemy, because you come away from a game of 63 points, you come away from a game of 51 points thinking it's okay. And Nate, you said it after the UMass game, after they scored 63 points, it's not okay. Like there's something fundamentally wrong here. Fundamentally wrong. We can play the Nate was right graphic that we should probably make that one up. But it's just been, it's been a situation where there's nothing that you can do other than blame the head guy, blame the play caller, and there's so much blame to go around.
Fitz,
T. Frank,
go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to ask you, in your like again, as an affirmed idiot of the game of football, the things that stand out to me, if I'm looking at this season, it is trying to break tendencies too much. It is an over the top effort, to whether it's the trick plays, whether it is running Nick straight into the box, running Katron outside of the tackles, right? Like that play to Malik is similar to the next play, which is a carry for Drew Allar, right? Which is let's talk about the exchange
on the board, Nate. After that series, someone said that was so predictable it hurt, and someone came back and said it wasn't predictable at all, and that's why it was such a failure. Like
nobody,
it was such a failure.
Nobody expects the plays. Some of the play, right? And there are just the ones that are anecdotal and they stand out to me for these very specific moments. But nobody's expecting them, because why would you expect them? They're plays that aren't the best option or don't appear to be utilizing your best assets as an offense in the best way. Passes from Keandre Lambert-Smith. You're probably not going to win a lot of games throwing a bunch of passes from your receiver
multiple times in a game. Not even that you did it once, that you did it in a game previously, and then you do it 2 more times. And so, by the way, what I was going to set you up with, Nate, was on that play to Malik Mega, both receivers are looking for the football. They didn't know who's supposed to be catching the football. Going back to the systemic problems within the offense of, what are the receivers doing? The receivers are a huge problem in this offense, where they don't know what they're doing, and from game to game, they're locked in or they're not. And it seems like when things are easy to predict, you go into Maryland and they have a very specific game plan, or you go into a different game and they have a very specific game plan. And okay, we're going to smash the tight ends against Delaware because they play 3 or 4 guys in deep coverage. And we're not going to throw in between those coverages. We're not going to have sticks routes and, sit down the tight end over the middle and try to open up the zones in certain ways. What we're going to do is we're going to smash the A button on the run game. And then in other situations, if you're playing a cover 0 team or a cover 1 team, they finally figured out how to beat those guys. But then when you play a team that can play multiple coverages, this offense seems to short circuit. And you're right. There's a lot of, let's think of the most unpredictable thing in these situations to add in week to week of, okay, now we're going to do quarterback counter. Like, that's the Bo Prabula package you're running with Drew Allar, and you get what you get when you have him run that ball between the tackles too many times, and he fumbles when somebody just puts their hand on his arm.
But also, Drew can't fumble that ball like that.
But he can't fumble that ball. Yep.
This is the stuff where we get so fixated on the one side of this story that nobody's going to talk about the fact that Drew threw a perfect ball to Dante Cephas and he dropped it in the end zone on the first drive, right? Penn State's second possession of the game. That's execution. That is your player that you brought here to make that play in that moment, not making it. Yep. And is that the worst thing in the world? No, it happens all the time. People don't execute all the time.
Yep.
But that's what we're talking about here. Is you're talking about this standard of what you need and what you want to be able to get over the top against those teams. That's it. That it's all of that stuff mixed together over 60 minutes. And for Penn State this season, in those 2 games, it never happened. It just wasn't there. It's Nick. Love him, right? I love Nick Singleton. I think he's an excellent football player, or has an opportunity to become one. he's going to get one shot a game at hitting a hole or a crease the way that he had at Michigan, or against Michigan in the game, right? He missed it. It. Like, and is that an impossible standard to hit at times? Absolutely. But it's also what you're counting on. You're counting on your players delivering in those moments. And there's just too much of not enough of that.
The other thing that I think is this offense, despite some of the issues that they have starting fast, the game plan typically I don't think is terrible coming out of the gate. They had multiple explosive plays that just didn't happen. The very first play of the game, Nick Singleton has potentially a touchdown, and Hunter Norzad misses his block. And again, I detail a bunch of these in the film room where they predicted where the safety was going to rotate. They ran the right scheme to get Nick to the edge, to get to a big run without a safety over top. Another potential touchdown. One block goes wrong and they don't get it. And that's kind of, the difference, but on a play-to-play level. But then when you get so lost in the weeds, you forget to step back and look back at the plan and go, well, why were they running on first down so much? I think process in this offense and the check with me's, and Penn State gets tricked into doing certain things that the defense wants them to do. So if Michigan, after all year playing a single high safety and showing then a 2 high safety on first down, and they check to a run every single play and you get 5 yards, and this is giving away what happens in the film room is like, you just got goaded into running for 5 yards and losing the game because you couldn't score points, and you didn't get your quarterback in rhythm whatsoever. So all of these things from a play perspective all the way down, it doesn't create an easy thing to say here to give you an encapsulation of what went wrong, because there's all of the things.
We're so fixated on finding the one person to blame.
Yep.
And even with the guy that gets fired, the problems run deeper than, or not, I don't say we run deeper than that, but they run widespread. Like Nate mentioned, the receivers. The receivers have not played, at the level that they need to beat Ohio State and Michigan this season. But like beyond that, they haven't lined up on the right side of the ball at times. Like that's where they're at with that. I mean, there seems to be a gap in there between lining up correctly and beating Michigan and Ohio State. They need to be somewhere in the middle right now, and they're not. And that's been really an interesting side note, because they've played the game like they're scared to go outside because they don't believe in those guys to make the difference. And what have we seen from those guys to believe that they can make the difference? And that's it's tough to watch. Also, Lambda made a good point in here that Yurcich was trying to get fired by the way he called the game. It just brought Seinfeld memories up, like when George was trying to get fired from the Yankees and he just kept doing everything wrong. That's kind of what it felt like watching the other day. It was really tragically hilarious and awful. Like that is, and it just does not make it for fun for anyone. I've said it for a long time. The points give you hope. Even if you're losing in the Big 12 scores, the points still give you hope. And that's we're at the end of that rope there.
There's a couple of interesting things I want to point out. Just this is a total aside, guys, but GOJ here has been in our chat for maybe a month now, before the Ohio State game. He's an Ohio State fan who has stuck around. So I want to say, first off, I feel like that's the ultimate compliment, that you don't even like the team we cover, and yet you're here each week. So I love that. And we're having a conversation of Michigan, Ohio State via the Penn State show. I feel like we're providing something to somebody that they're not getting elsewhere. So I love that. But I do want to transition into what Jarvis Slack says here, which is just such a patently, I want to say wrong, but it's also nuanced. Michigan's run game was too strong. Michigan ran the ball 30 straight times because they didn't have any game pressure to throw the football. That's not Penn State's defense being bad. That's Penn State's offense being bad. Because when they did throw the football, they were under constant pressure. So, Nate, this is a conversation you and I have had. Was the Penn State defense good enough? Because they did give up critical situations, but they also were out there the whole time and only gave up 24 points on short fields.
Yeah, like overall, for the most part, yeah, they were good. They had a lot of great moments on Saturday. However, and this is the sticking point for me, they were not good enough on third and longs. The whole formula for Penn State defensively is twofold, right? Is on first and second down, You got to stop the run so that you can put them into 3rd and long. And then on 3rd and long, not only do you have to prevent that first down from happening, which is a huge piece, at minimum, when you put teams into 3rd and long, you got to get off the field.
Yep.
Penn State didn't do that.
Yep.
But the second piece of it, and this is the part that I don't know how many people agree with or not, doesn't really matter to me. Penn State's bread and butter is being offensive on 3rd down and long. That is where they get all the stuff. All the stuff that blows up happens in that situation. And it didn't happen other than the first sack on JJ McCarthy, where they caught him from behind in that first 3rd and long situation. Michigan had repeated success in those 3rd and longs.
Running
the
on
football.
3rd and long.
Well, and that's
the last 3 weeks. Yeah. Indiana did the same thing.
And that's the, and that's the,
Yeah.
and KJ Winston said it after the game. He said, JJ did things with his legs that we weren't anticipating on those 3rd and long. Like I asked, why was it so hard to get off the field on 3rd down? He said they did different things. That inside, it was a touchdown, right? The inside pass was effectively a run play. It might not have gone for a touchdown.
It was, but it set up the touchdown. It set up the touchdown.
It set up a touchdown. So they just missed too many opportunities. Again, talking about Penn State's one missed block preventing the huge play. Michigan didn't miss. Michigan didn't miss it in those situations. And it might seem like a minor detail, but it, like, as though everyone overcomes those things. JJ McCarthy's 3rd and 9 run where he went around the edge, right? Like that was perfectly blocked.
Can I ask Fitz this question? Because this is something I've been thinking about since the game. Is there a reason you don't put a corner on edge contain? And is there a reason you have a defensive tackle on the field at most times? Because this 3rd down package, while it's great against the pass, it seems that teams have figured out a pretty fundamental flaw about it. So do you think that needs to adjust, or is this just they need to be in their gaps? Which is what happened on some of those plays. They were not in their gaps.
They got caught. Gap soundness is something that we talked about. But you think about the down and distance situation, and it's clearly a passing down, and Penn State clearly has approached that as a passing down because of the pressure that they are able to put on, because of the way that they can get to the quarterback from the edge. Like, those guys are gone. I mean, they are straight up field, ready to go rip the head off the quarterback. It's, I don't want to say easy, but you could see some of that stuff coming. And it's what I talked about when Indiana was in the red zone, potentially there to take the lead. They ran the football on 3rd down because they thought that they could catch them. And, they didn't. And obviously that worked out for Penn State. But it is a situation where they are so hyper aggressive that it burned them, and it burned them badly. But going back to the original point, like, they ran 13 plays in the 3rd quarter, 47 yards, 3.6 yards per carry. Like, that's not that great. They were 1 for 3 on 3rd downs. Penn State did a good job. That third quarter showdown that we were looking for ended 3-0, which is pretty funny when you take a look at all the talk that we did about that. In the 4th quarter, 17 plays, 70 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, including the 30-yard run that the backbreaker there. 2 for 5 on 3rd down. Penn State's defense pretty much did what they could, and of course, they went through that. They had the backbreaker there on the Corum run there at the end. But the amount of hairs that we split on this side of the ball compared to the amount of hairs that we have to split on the other side of the ball. It's pretty crazy. I think Penn State, did they play well enough to win? I think they did, but it wasn't a lights out performance. It wasn't a situation where you can look at that and just say that they were just kind of fruitless. There were mistakes. There was things they need to correct. There were certainly cannot let the other team run like that on 3rd down. And Rutgers is going to try it. Like, Rutgers has a semi-competent run game. Like, they're not going to beat you with the passing game, but they can try and outsmart you. You can try and do that. You can bet that Kirk Shiraka's seen that on film as well. But that hyper-aggressive mentality, as fun as it is to watch and as productive as it can be, and as much as that can snowball, can burn you. And Michigan, to their credit, did a great job coming back and countering that.
The one last, and I'm gonna break down all these runs later today, hopefully, because we got to get to it at some point. This is the last comment I want to make about Michigan ran over Penn State, and this is the main thing. I won't get to all of these runs when I break down the film later, but if you're forcing the other team to put 7 offensive linemen on the field, they're not dominating in the run game. They are desperately trying to find a way to run the football. And I'll say it again, Penn State's offense allowed that to happen by not scoring points and putting any game pressure on the Michigan offense whatsoever. So, where do we go from here? Nate, you said you shot your shot a little bit earlier, but there's some things that we need to get to from, I think, a formatic standpoint. And how much do you guys have confidence in the collective approach of the offensive game planning and the co-offensive coordinators making a better plan of attack and executing the attack better than what they had previously? Fitz, how do you feel about how this sets up for Penn State against what you have accurately said is a good Rutgers defense?
Yeah, it's a good Rutgers defense. They're physical. They do not have as much depth, so they're going through some injuries right now that they're going to have to deal with. And I think that eventually is one of those games that you can see it drawn out. But I think it's going to be like a much closer game than you think, because number one, we don't know what the offense is going to look like. Like they're not going to come out and flip it on its head. But at the same time, you got a running backs coach calling the plays, so maybe you see a little bit more continuity in the running game. You got a tight ends guy that has, or a tight ends coach up above in the box that has called plays before. So I don't know what we're going to look at and what this is going to be. I can bet that you're going to harp on some of those things, like the short throws to get Allar in rhythm, running like maybe a little bit of a different style. I mean, let's be honest, they got to keep those guys healthy, or keep those guys happy in the backfield. And J1 wants to keep Katron and Nick around. So, hey, feed those guys and see what you can do. On the other side, it's kind of like Michigan coached against Penn State. You're not really worried about Rutgers scoring too many points. They were shut out this weekend by Iowa. So you've got the ability to maybe play a little bit looser, if you will, throw some turnover type throws and see if you can complete them. I don't know, man. Like it's going to be a wild card on Saturday. I think Penn State, obviously the better team, the deeper team, and that's going to be one of those things that can go out. But I can see this being a frustrating game to watch.
Yeah, Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that sounds right. That sounds right. A frustrating. Yeah. No, I think that you have to work with what you have, right? Whatever the tools are in the toolbox, and so I wouldn't anticipate this getting like being dramatically different in terms of our view of this. Maybe it will feel that way internally, but I think from the outside, it's probably going to look fairly similar. I just think, look, one of the pieces of this is timing of calls, right? Like, I mean, it's almost like this
having a better feel and a better flow of the game.
Like all the intangible stuff that you could smack me in the face with this stuff and I would have no idea, right, what that looks like, how you gauge that. But it's also an art that some guys have apparently and some guys don't.
Can I interject here quickly? Because there was one point in 2022, I thought Mike Yurcich did some of those things. Like the Auburn game from a play sequencing, and he set up certain runs with certain things and then came back with a different one. It ended up being few and far between, but he did show the ability at times to call a good game with exactly what you're talking about, which is kind of the mystifying thing to me, is like it all went away. All of those positive signs you might have had in 22, none of them were here this year. So, like, getting back to some of that stuff is paramount. But are either of these guys play callers?
It's just a question of, and we can't know this, but I think that James Franklin gave a fairly straight answer about it yesterday. Is the balance between, all right, how much was he constrained by this obvious injury of the receiving room, right? Like, so the literal injuries to Trey Wallace, but also the just being hampered by what you have to work with in that room. And James Franklin saying, yeah, we've talked about this. There's a lot of that is a part of the conversation, but also should not have inhibited it to the degree that it appeared to, right? Like that's not the only or the overriding piece of this, but also we can't negate the fact that it is a contributor. And so it just felt like a guy who needed a certain, it's like the opposite of Top Chef, right? Like he needs his ingredients.
Yes.
You can't throw him the vending machine challenge and expect him to come out and cook something excellent to eat with Doritos and Twinkies. Like,
what's in the fridge? He's got to go shopping every day. He can't find leftovers and make something delicious.
But if he has his fridge, maybe he's pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see what that looks like, but that's not reality in college football also.
Yeah.
Most of the time you don't have that. Most of the time you don't have that situation. So I think that the evidence was overwhelming to the opposite. And Franklin made his move.
I think I don't know who specifically put this in here, but this isn't going to be just an easy fix. And Fitz, this will spin us forward. Recruiting is a big part of this conversation, and desperately needing to fix the receiver position, but also not letting anything slip with some of these moves and some of these things that are happening. You don't want to lose any ground by making this move. It feels like Penn State would have lost ground if they didn't make this move at this point with how bad the offense had been in big games. Is that you're giving me a look? Is that unfair to say?
I mean, you're kind of damned if you don't, damned if you do here. Like you're going to have to cut your losses at times, and you look at that receiver room, and hey, some of it's just not good enough. And I don't think that's a Hagen's issue. I think that's more of an overall, just building to that. The way that they got here is just you put yourself in a hole there, and you're reaping the opposite of benefits of that receiver room. So I think there's going to be changes. I think there's going to be guys that, that explore their options, especially in this portal world that we're in now.
Yeah.
Might be a good thing, might not be a good thing. I don't know. And I mean, that's just the thing with college football is you can't cut these guys and go out and sign some more. This is not a situation, like I said, with the extension while you're waiting for a quarterback to develop. It's tough, man. I said it on the board this week about, if you bring in a guy like Sean Lewis, who's going to spread it out and going to throw it, and you don't have the receivers to do that. And, there was blowback into that says, hey, you got to get better receivers. It's not that easy. I mean, you saw Penn State struck out a lot in the portal last year at receiver because it's not easy to find those guys. Everybody wants those guys, and places are going to pay those guys more than Penn State's going to. Penn State's collective is going to pay those guys. So it's going to be a tough turnaround. So you've got to, harvest the most of what you have right now. Figure out what doesn't fit in those plans, and be comfortable with it going forward. You got a lot of receivers on scholarship right now. You definitely see some turnover there in the offseason. Definitely see some portal exploration there as well. So you just can't flip a room in college football. It's nearly impossible to do.
Ask
so
the USC defense if you can just be good after 1 year of portal additions, right?
Yeah, you can help yourself. Like Colorado helped themselves greatly with the portal, but there's a downside to that. Like you're not going to be able to do everything that you want to do, especially with the way that you recruit these guys. So I'm very curious to see how this offseason goes. I think Penn State's going to go heavy in the portal. They've sort of, I don't want to say packed it in with 2024 recruiting, but most of the focus right now is what they can do to improve their 2024 team. Yeah. And incoming freshmen aren't going to be the way that they go about doing that. So it'll be a fascinating offseason. Sign up for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
That's perfect. Nate, final thoughts. I want to get you out. I'm going to ask you a specific question. I apologize. I know final thoughts are a broad thing, but going off what Fitz just said, I think there is a certain fear that the portal can be beneficial, guys that want to seek other places, but also can be detrimental. Just the way that you've seen Penn State operate over the years, and they've been a tight-knit team. They have been a team that has been close, from a bond and personal standpoint. Is this enough that guys might consider their other options, or do you think that James Franklin and the staff have a good hold of, this is a healthy program, and as you said, this is an opportunity, not the sky is falling and everybody's going to transfer? Because that's 30% of the comments in the chat today.
Yeah, this stuff is all in flux. That's the reality. Is it's not like history has yet to be written. And so there are people and conversations happening in that locker room right now of, hey, what are you going to do next year? Right? Guys that you're not expecting or you are expecting, both, like all of it. And so it's when decisions are yet to be made, it influences the ability of other people to make decisions, right? Things after Brent Pry left, right? Where it's like, oh, well, in that gap between Brent Pry leaving and Manny Diaz being hired and how everyone responds to that and reacts to that, that's all fluid, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think that I think that this is an interesting point for the program where it makes these last two, like, I don't know why it took me so long to get to this point. These two games are huge. They are massive. The difference in perceptions of trajectory of the program internally, forget what everybody else is talking about. Like us, our conversations, they don't matter.
Yeah.
But what does matter on the field are the players that are in the locker room, the players that you have on the roster. And so how they feel about their ability to contribute next season and beyond or not is massive, right? And that perception will be dictated, I think, in a large way by what happens over these next two games, right? If they drop both of these games, that leaves a terrible taste in your mouth going into next season and toward a bowl, so on and so forth. If they win both of these games, maybe and a hire is made that looks good and is appealing to people, maybe you feel differently. Maybe you're more optimistic. It's just wild, the variety, the spectrum. There we go, Jay. Love it.
I just wanted to bring in all opinions and I wanted to bring in all perspectives because you're right. Jay's already decided that next year is going to be terrible. Fitz, I want to get out of here on this one. There is more information. There's more news coming up. There's a decision in recruiting. So tell us a little bit about what is going on later today.
Yeah. Sorry, I switched gears there completely. Beckham Kritza, quarterback from Colorado, is going to announce this evening, 7:00. I think Penn State's in the driver's seat right there. He was not one of the guys that we talked about last week. He had yet to confirm his visit. We expected him to come, but we were waiting for the official word from him at that point. Very interesting, like, pivot right here, right? Like, Penn State is probably going to get a quarterback later today. Penn State doesn't have an offensive coordinator. Penn State still has some really good quarterbacks in the region on the board. It's going to be fascinating because this is on one hand, you've got a loophole here. So if you want to recruit another quarterback after this, you can certainly say that, hey, the new guy is going to come in, do his own evaluations, talk about what he wants and everything. So there's that. But on the other hand, you're taking a quarterback, and not many of these guys that we're talking about, the Malik Washingtons, Matt Zollers, Ryan Montgomery was here this weekend, are looking to be a part of a 2 quarterback class. So fascinating development, interesting. I would call it a surprising development, but that's kind of where we're at with things going on right now in the recruiting world. Beckham Kritza, again, from the Boulder, Colorado area. Hope to get out there and scout him in person, maybe for a week or so at some point. But other than that,
scouting out some breweries too, I imagine.
Hey, we'll check out the lay of the land. We'll post up at the West End Tavern, see what we can do there. No, it's going to be. It's just an interesting development from my side, especially with the guys that they had in this past weekend.
It's another reason to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. That's what we're going to leave you with potentially more news coming out today on the YouTube channel. So great reason to subscribe so you don't miss any of that news and some in-depth breakdowns if Beckham decides to be a Nittany Lion. I believe tonight at 7. So be checking out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for more information about recruiting, which is just you're getting all of the information, all the answers about recruiting. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com from Fitz and from Ryan, and on the Blue White Illustrated message board. I'm Thomas Frankar. These guys have been phenomenal. Thank you both. This was a great conversation. Hopefully it made you feel better in the chat. This is a therapy session 2.0 after the post-game show, and now today talking about Penn State and the trajectory of the offense going into the final couple games.
Can I make my joke?
Yeah.
If Franklin had just not gone for 2, everyone would have been happy because he would have lost 24-17 like a normal coach.
Like a normal coach, a normal score. Everyone would have felt better.
Fine with that.
It's a good point. And I have other things we could say about that, but we got to go.
It is a point.
See you later.
Yeah.